This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society BC, brought to you by SITKA. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, YETI. Thank you SITKA Gear and YETI for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems. Ladies and gentlemen, back in the studio for another Talk is Sheep episode. Today's a good one. We've got the big kahuna, not the biggest kahuna, but a pretty big kahuna from the Wild Sheep Society BC here. Vice President Chris Barker, long-time leadership of the Wild Sheep train. And buddy, it's good to connect and catch up on wild sheep issues.
Yeah, 100%. It's excited to be back on, Kyle. And obviously, we always think summer's fairly quiet, but it seems to be fairly busy this year with what we've had going on and what's coming up. So, yeah, pretty exciting times for sheep in BC.
Yeah, it was historically 10 years ago, but I don't feel that way anymore. Last summer was ridiculous too, and it's sort of that reprieve where it's not like, okay, we don't have the shows and we don't have that sort of pressure of like, okay, but we've got all kinds of meetings, and as you know, and as our followers know and our members know, that we've been very active as an organization, provincially, federally, building those bonds beyond our borders, within our borders. And that all takes time and effort, and so there's really no downtime anymore, is there?
No, not at all. You know what? It's really annoying is it's interfering with sheep season. We're not even on the mountain. A couple of idiots.
Yeah. What are those 5 stages of the sheep hunter? The hunter, not the sheep hunter. Is it 5 or 4? What? Run them through them, because we're in that late stage, I think.
I think I think there's 5 stages. I can't remember all of them. Obviously, I think one of them's the beginning stage, the hunting stage, and then the killing or gathering stage. But we're definitely in the conservation stage and giving back stage right now. The twilight of our career, I guess.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so much going on, Chris, and I just wanted to get on here for our members and our listeners to sort of give an update on a whole bunch of things. I guess let's start off with the fun stuff that people get pretty jacked up about. And there's been some killer frickin' rams hitting the dirt these past 8 days. Just a 182-inch stone, 39-inch doll. This is just the stuff that I'm hearing about, and there's just some giant rams going down this year.
That's like what's going on. So, I mean, hopefully, what we come back to and what we talk about and all the stuff that we've been funding is habitat work, burns in the north, ungulate management, seeing the benefits of those sheep getting more mature, but also having better feed, all contributes to the same thing, right? And I think we're probably going to see some of that with some of our bighorn populations. I was just reading Bill's article in the magazine from his hunt last year, and he saw some pretty killer rams from the read there, but kind of summed up how I was feeling. I was trying not to get there, but I was like, you know what? It's just, you we're all coming towards that end or later in life part of it. And to read Bill's article, it was pretty good. But, summarizing the quality of sheep that we have in the province. So as we come to the end of our conservation careers, hopefully we're leaving our sheep world in a better place.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty hard to argue that you haven't done that, Chris. And just for the record, your sheep career is nowhere near ended, just to be honest. So don't start talking in those words. So what was I going to say? Yeah, you said something there that got me all fired up. But it's just awesome to see the resource out there and hunters having the opportunity to go out. And some great projects on the go out there. It'll come back to me what I was going to hit you with, but really cool. So a couple things I want to touch on today. You and I were just out in Calgary, and we were visiting our good friends. It's the American Wildlife Conservation Partnership, arguably one of the most effective and strongest sort of hunting advocates and that are affecting change on the Hill in Washington, doing some incredible work down there. And it's pretty awesome to see what they've done. You and I had the opportunity to travel out there to sort of see how they get business done. And, we're kind of seeing we've kind of seen that there's a bit of a void here in Canada on the national level in terms of looking after what we care about, hunting and trapping and those aspects, and of course conservation as well. But there are conservation-centric orgs, but not sort of that hunting, trapping aspect. And we kind of touched on some of that. You and I were out in Ottawa for the conservative symposium. They have a wildlife symposium that they hold, and they have a garden party. And it's kind of partisan in the sense that it's hosted by the conservatives. So it doesn't really scratch the need for a national sort of voice for the things that are important to our hunting and trapping community. So, it's one of the things that we've been sort of aware of and sort of recognize that there's a bit more of a need for that in Canada.
100%, Colin. That's when you phoned me about it, could I make it? And I was like, yeah, I know it's a great opportunity. And for some reason, I didn't know what the vision was from what AWCP was about. I knew it was the American Wildlife Conservation Partners. And of course, when you hear the word conservation, you always think, okay, well, it's all these groups, so Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Wild Sheep Foundation, and it's such a diverse group. But what they were, I wasn't quite sure if it was more around what projects or what certain things. And then listening to their presentations, it's really focused on political and changing or bringing our message to government or what they're doing in the U.S. And I was like, oh, okay, this is completely, well, I wouldn't say completely, but it was a different direction that I didn't quite have twigged in my brain on what AWCP was about. But then once we were at the meeting, it's like, holy smokes, they're bringing their message as a group. And the recognition piece is that they're the people they've got to deal with are asking, what do you want to see? So they brought 5 things to the table when the new administration came in. This is what we're looking for on the landscape. It's like, that's transitional change for wildlife and habitat. And, all our groups in Canada, and especially BC, we all do a little piece of that. But can you imagine the voice we would have being united, saying that we can do X, Y, Z for wildlife and habitat instead of this piecemeal stuff, and then government putting stuff out that sometimes I think it's going in the right direction, but the way that it's presented or delivered just creates chaos. And I don't want to say too much on where my brain's thinking on that, but I think you probably know what I'm talking about, what the federal government did last year, and bringing certain things out on trying to change what we can do for habitat. But I think as a united voice, that's what we're missing in Canada. And I think it'd be a slight tweak. Obviously, the U.S. is different between state and federal lands, and what we have between Crown land and where the province rules, mostly on that. So I think as a diverse group in Canada, we'd be able to support each other provincially, but also federally on what those federal issues would be. So, yeah, I think there's a huge need for it, Kyle. I'm a big advocate for moving something forward. So I think, yeah, if we can get something like that off the ground in Canada, it would be transitional.
Yeah, and we look and people go, well, like, what do you mean? Like, what do you need? And it's like, well, first of all, we need a voice in Ottawa, and there's individual organizations doing great work that go out to the Hill and they lobby for certain issues, and there's a whole plethora of them. But there's not really one that's dedicated to hunting and trapping. There is a collaborative. There is a federation. The wildlife federations have a national collaborative, and they advocate, and they have their wish list, and they, it's not nonpartisan as it should be, but it's exclusively the federation. So if there's any issues that are sort of beyond that, and again, it's a big coalition. But it's not all inclusive. There's lots of people that are sort of on the outside. So I think having one voice speaking, and that's the strength of AWCP. AWCP doesn't show up, American Wildlife Conservation Partnership. They don't show up as an entity representing resident hunters or outfitters. They show up as a unified voice. And just for our listeners to get an idea of it, we're talking big orgs. Like Wild Sheep Foundation is part of it, but they're not. They're one of the quote smaller orgs. There's these big orgs like Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and Delta Waterfowl organizations with hundreds of thousands of members. So they have a very big voice. So when they show up in the Hill and they have an issue and they talk to their elected officials, they listen, and they're very effective. And it's a classic example of everybody working together. And so it's inspiring. It was great to see, and hopefully, something will shake out in Canada here where we can really have a powerful voice and really make a difference. So time will tell as it all unfolds, but I think that there's an interest and a will in that, and seeing AWCP and how they're functioning is really cool. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more, Kyle. I think. And just the way it was structured, like the mix of people, there's lobbyists, there was bios, there was Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, like you said, Delta Waterfowl, Ducks Unlimited, Whitetail, like the diverse group was pretty interesting to see, and how they divvied it out to, their 5 pillars that they were talking about. I think they've got 21 pillars in total, but the 5 pillars that they specifically talked about when we were at the meeting was pretty cool to see their updates, and just the influence and the direct knowledge of the political component. And just as, like we're kind of figuring it out, me and you, the political component within BC and how we can actually get through to the ministers and build those relationships. It's really all about relationship building with staff, bureaucrats, and politicians to achieve those objectives, or whatever what your message is, right?
Mm-hmm. And again, just to be clear, because we get a lot of this sort of mud flung at us, we're nonpartisan as an organization. We're looking for the best for wild sheep. That's our mission. That's our job. So we're not, it doesn't matter who's sitting in that chair. We have to build relationships with them to be effective, and advocate for the things that are important for the resource and for British Columbia's wild sheep, and the things that are important to our membership. So, okay, cool. I think we hammered that down pretty good. Lots of cool stuff going across the province. Chris, you're our projects chair. You've been the vision on so many different projects that the Society's been involved in. And, we kind of have our 3 legacy projects. We got the Fraser River Test and Remove. We got our Northern Burns in the Peace region. And then we have our Psoroptes project and our Bighorn recovery project. Really, it's a disease recovery project in the Okanagan. It's not exclusive to Psoroptes, but that's the work we're doing right now. So all 3 of those are really a huge undertaking. I'm really proud of what our board and our members have done collectively, along with our partners. And of course, there's tons of other sort of smaller projects, sort of not legacy level projects that we're working on. But let's dive into those, Chris. You pick your favorites, and you don't. Okay, I won't just say that. That's not fair. But just go down the list and kind of go through, those projects and where we're at, and the great work. And we've done work on all 3 of them this year, so all really, really exciting.
Yeah, I think probably start off where you started, Kyle, with just our partnership with ONA and Penticton Indian Band on the Psoroptes project, and obviously Peter being heavily involved in that, living in Penticton, and taking a really huge responsibility on promoting what we're doing there with the Okanagan Bighorns page. But then he's also involved in the feeding component, the organizational structure, the sponsor sheep program. Like, just he's been a workhorse on that project, along with Mackenzie, and I think they've got a bigger team there now, so I won't mention everybody, but they're doing an unbelievable job up there. So obviously we had to, I can't kind of touching on what we just talked about with AWCP and how important that is. We ran into an issue where we were trying to get some drugs, and we couldn't really, we were struggling to get some the drugs to kick the project off. And me and you had a bit of a convo. We reached out to Kylie. She gave us some info. You reached out to your connection. I don't know how deep you want to get into names, but made a couple of phone calls, and 4 days later, we've got a letter of approval. I don't know if you want to just touch on that a little bit, Kyle, from the political side of things, but it kind of leads into what we just touched on with AWCP before we kind of talk about the Psoroptes a bit more.
Yeah, I don't think it's any secret there. So, we've been waiting since January. We put an application in for this treatment trial drug, and just it wasn't happening. And of course we've had our sheep in the pens, and really we're not being set back too far, but now we're getting to the point where we're set back. So we had them in there, they lambed. They had to be captured at a certain time. They lambed, and then we did our first round of our baseline testing, ran them all through, and now we're to the point where we need to do the treatments. And so we were waiting on this drug. We were waiting. And so I reached out to Blaine Calkins, who's a Conservative MP. Blaine did speak at our Penticton show last year. We've been out, at that garden party and the symposium, the outdoor hunt. Blaine is the shadow critic for, I think it's hunting, angling, and conservation, and really looks after our community. And the important part there is it's also conservation. It's not just hunting and angling. And so I reached out to Blaine, explained the issue to him. And interesting, like anyone that's dealt with MLAs or MPs, you usually reach out, and then weeks later they maybe reach back to you. It's not a quick process. And because the relationship we built as an organization with Blaine, we reached out to his office. An hour later, we were on the phone, and he got all the details. He did his due diligence, and then he reached out to his counterpart at the Liberal Party, spoke about it to them, and so this is a bipartisan issue. They felt this was something that they could move forward for the betterment of the project and conservation, and the health minister's office got involved. They reached out to me, and we had a conversation, and then 5 days later we had our permit. So it's mind-boggling what Blaine was able to achieve. But again, it was bipartisan. The Liberals were involved as well. And it's just a very, very cool example of what we're able to do. And if we didn't have that relationship, the drugs are a federal issue. It's Health Canada, right? So they had to approve it out of Ottawa. So it's important. We see, you think, well, you're a society, it's a regional issue. No, it's not really. There's federal things that affect us too. And there's many more, as we all know, that impact us. So, just a true hats off to Blaine Calkins. He's certainly an advocate for the things that are important to us. And of course, hunting and angling goes without saying, but conservation's in there too. And Blaine is a true conservationist. So, and then of course, across the aisle too, we can't be remiss because the Liberal candidate Liberal MP that Blaine was working with played an important role in that too. So pretty cool story. It's pretty inspiring to see.
Yeah, and just the whole team, just the emails that came back once the letter came through, is like you could just see everybody's kind of sigh of relief. It's like we can finally move forward and help these sheep that we've got in the pen. So, like you said, we kind of touched on a little bit, but we've got 28 or 29 sheep that they captured and put in the pens, and then they had, I think, 12 to 14 lambs. I can't remember the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but there's close to 40 sheep in these pens. We're hoping to do our first handling or treatment in about a month's time. So we've done monitoring for the first two. We handle them about on a month cycle, because mostly Mackenzie and Pete organizing that, but the next handling is hopefully going to be the first treatment, and we can see what the effects these drugs have on these sheep. And then hopefully we can kind of go through the whole process, see how resistant they are, see if the drug lasts a long period of time. Do we only need to give them one dose? Like all of these questions about treatment, what that looks like. And then can we apply this on the landscape? Do we have to capture every sheep to apply this treatment, or can we do this with feed or water? What those nuanced pieces look like. So really cool project. Such an opportunity to, again, get rid of something that's man-made that's having an impact on wild sheep populations. So something that we hadn't planned on dealing with potentially right away, but it's become such a big issue, and now it's a cross-border issue. Washington State is interested in it. Washington Wild Sheep Foundation, So really cool just to kind of get all of these moving parts together in one direction to hopefully in 15 months' time, we'll have an application that will benefit sheep in Canada and British Columbia and Washington State. And, the habitat's been burnt. The habitat's in fantastic condition. So get rid of the Psoroptes component of that. And then hopefully we'll see our populations rebound to some numbers what they were like back in the 80s. I think in the Ashnolas and around Cray, there used to be 500 sheep in that area. So as an overall population in the Okanagan, I think our numbers are down. I think they're below 1,000 if I can remember correctly. So, I think before they were in that 2,000, 2,500 range. So really cool opportunity to start rebuilding our populations again from something that was man-made that's had an impact and seen our populations decline. Let's rebuild them. And then obviously on the other side of the valley is that which kind of goes in hand is we've got Movie on the east side of Okanagan Valley. So, taking all our kind of touching into our, probably my favorite project, I will say it, Kyle, the Fraser River project, probably because it's been going so long. And
Hey, buddy.
Yeah.
Can I just interrupt just so briefly and just a shout out to our sponsors and our partners on the Psoroptes project, the Adopt a Sheep stuff. Do you mind if I just touch on that just for 1 minute?
No,
Okay,
100%. Cool. I was going to kind of come back because we're drifting in there, but yeah, no, keep it Psoroptes centered for now.
Okay, we can come back to it if you want. I just want to mention like the collaboration so people understand. We touched on it a little bit on a previous podcast, Pete and I, but we've had incredible support for the Psoroptes treatment program with Okanagan Nation Alliance. So the partnership with Okanagan Nation Alliance is huge. That's obviously like we couldn't do it without them, clearly. And then, we've had incredible support from the Wild Sheep Foundation, their chapter and affiliates, and others as well. So Hudbay Minerals, Copper Mountain Mine has stepped up. They're a major supporter of this project, and Washington Wild Sheep Foundation as well. So they're our conservation sponsors for this project. They've been very, very pivotal and put a lot of capital into this. And then on top of it, we've got a whole bunch of Adopt a Sheep sponsors. So people can, if they're interested and they want to support this project, of course, it's expensive. This is, $250,000 plus project. We need financial capital, and this is being raised. There's money being raised to do this. So we've offered an Adopt a Sheep sponsorship. It's $2,500. It's charitable. You can get a charitable receipt if you like. And then your capital will go to support. Basically, it costs $2,500 to keep these sheep in captivity, feed them, and do all the work we're going to do. And what we're going to do is, at the end of the project, release them, and hopefully they'll be healthy. They've already lambed. We had about 40% lamb to ewe ratio, which was great. So our, Adopt a Sheep sponsors of Eric Scanning, Red Stag Construction, Texas Bighorn Society adopted 2 sheep, Alberta chapter of the Wild Sheep Foundation 2 sheep, Cam Foss, Foss Media, which is Adam and Frankie, Sigrid Lightfoot and Barbara Watt, and then the Karameas Costin Sportsmen's Association. And then we have a pen sponsor, which is the Idaho chapter of the Wild Sheep Foundation. So just, a lot of names there. It's a lot to take in. I think my takeaway on that, Chris, is look at the collaboration. Look at all these people. And these are people that are coming together that they're not really, what's a common theme there? It's not hunting. It's the wild sheep resource. Hudbay Minerals. Like that's just, but they care about the resource. They want to give back. They want to support. Pretty phenomenal. It's inspiring and exciting. When I look at all the collaboration, this is the way it should be. First Nations, an NGO, all these partners, mining companies, federal government getting involved, just amazing support.
100%, Kyle. And like I said, you just listed a list off, and there's 40 sheep there. I'm not sure if we split the lambs off compared to the ewes, but there's still some opportunities for people to sponsor a sheep. Like I say, the projects, we're 4 months in, but we're really just starting the treatment. So, a great opportunity to get your, buy a sponsorship, get involved. If you're close, so you can get out here, there's an opportunity to go feed those sheep too. So there's volunteer opportunities there as well. So I think, for people, if they want to get really up close and personal with a wild animal, it's still a wild animal, but you can see the nuance, you can see the damage that the Psoroptes has done to them, and be part of it. And really, that's something you're going to carry with for the rest of your life. So, it kind of ingrains, and you kind of just touched on it a bit, Kyle, why all these people are involved. And I think it's just that opportunity to feel like they're doing more. Some people, maybe it is just the money, but there is more to do than just the money piece. It's the passion piece, right? I think, I always joke about, once you're in the sheep world, you're never getting out. It's like the mafia, but once you're in, I think it's that passion piece that keeps you there and keeps you coming back and keeps you involved, and you're not going anywhere once you're involved.
Do you want to know something pretty bizarre?
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
I still have never handled a live sheep.
Well, you need to get on it, my friend.
Isn't that pathetic? I was out at the pens when Minister Neil came through and toured in July, which was super cool. Yeah. But we weren't doing a handling, and obviously they're not going to go catch a sheep so I can touch it. So, which is the right thing. But it was super cool to see. But I've never, I could say I've done a little bit of volunteer work for wild sheep. I think I qualify for that, but none that involved me handling a sheep. So really cool. Yeah.
Just a little bit, eh, buddy?
Yeah, that's the thing is this wild sheep community volunteerism for the resource looks different for different people, right? Like, like I said, I've never handled wild sheep. I know you've done a ton of it, Chris, and super envious of the work that you've done over the years, the many transplants you've been involved in, and everything like that. And I'm really excited. I know we're going to segue to the Fraser, and this is probably the great segue, but I know we're working on a drop net capture for this winter. We have the past 3 winters, which hasn't worked out because of the conditions. But hoping when that happens, I'll be able to get out there and hopefully get my hands on some sheep. But
yeah, well, I think coming back to you touched on handling the sheep, but look how many of our members have never harvested a ram. Yeah. I don't know what those numbers are anymore, but I know we have a lot of people show up to our convention. They're interested in sheep hunting, but they're not. They haven't harvested a ram yet. They may have been on a sheep hunt, but they haven't harvested a ram. And even, some of our board of directors, like Pete, he's been involved in a lot of guided hunts, but hasn't harvested one yet. So I think again, it just speaks to that wild sheep family, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. It's super cool. Yeah, so awesome. We chatting Fraser stuff now, or what's?
Yeah,
that's amazing, man.
Yeah, what we're seeing for lamb recruitment, I sure wish we had those inventory numbers showing what the population would be, because I think my guess is higher than Chris's, but he's probably right because he does it for a living. But
and you're an eternal optimist too.
That's true too. But yeah, like the Fraser River, I think we're in our 7th year. We got maybe 1 or 2 years left to kind of go through, and then some follow-up testing. But, by the time we're done, talk about a project that's a legacy project, 2.4 million by the time we're done. When we initially started that project, it was 1.2. And I was thinking, I don't know how we're going to get all that money together, but we'll figure it out as we go along. But here we are 7 or 8 years in, and we've treated 7 herds, and we're seeing lamb recruitment from 44 to 55 lambs per 100 ewes. And we had one group at 73 lambs per 100 ewes. That's off the charts. That's how you rebuild a population, right?
Go
ahead, bud.
Well, I don't know if you said it, but I think pre-treatment, the average is around 13, and post-treatment was in that high 40s. So we've quadrupled lamb recruitment. So it's huge.
Yeah. I think, when you start a project like that, I never thought about the numbers of what we would be achieving, of what that would look like. But, to see those numbers back and to see that you can actually get that kind of recruitment with the right stuff it's exciting if we ever have an issue down the road with something else that man does to screw up wildlife, but that we can potentially continue to save them.
Yeah, it's crazy. But phenomenal project, and just really exciting. So we said 10 years, I think 1.56 was our initial budget. We're, well north of that now. We're looking at, I think our budget's about 400 and change this year. And again, incredible partnerships. We could not do this without the support of the so many different partners. The Wild Sheep Foundation's been front and center and all that. Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation, Abbotsford Fish and Game has been an important partner and critical partner from the very early days. Midwest chapter of the Wild Sheep Foundation and others, but those are the heavy lifters, and it's incredible the work. And then the work, and we've had him on the podcast, talked lots about this, but Ben Barakoff, Canadian Wildlife Capture, him giving back 10% of all of his helicopter time in full donation, or is it 25%? It's a huge number. Ben's numbers exceed most of our funding partners. And like people think, oh, well, whatever, it's just a business. And no, it doesn't work that way. This guy is taking directly out of his pocket, because if we had anyone else doing that work, we're going to be paying 25% more. This is a guy that's incredibly passionate, that is given for the resource. So I get a little bit emotive, I guess, when I start talking about, when I think about these orgs and these people that are giving so much for the resource and for the work that's being done. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, no, Ben's unbelievable. And, I was fortunate enough to be out with Chris and Ben on a capture. And let me tell you, not only does he give back the way that he does, but man, is he a hell of a pilot. I mean, and I don't get goosebumpy, and I didn't get goosebumpy with it, but man, can he fly that chopper. It is amazing to see what he does with it. But one funding partner you forgot about, and I know they're close and dear, and there's a few people in there, but Jurassic Classic has been a huge supporter of the Fraser River project from day one. And for, I think you guys have 52 guests each year, and Jurassic's coming up in, I think, 2 weeks, you told me, Kyle, or a week and a half, 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's 2 weeks. It's the 22nd to 25th, yeah.
So I don't know what the numbers are, what we've contributed from Jurassic, with that group of 52 people that contributes to the Classic. A lot of that money's gone directly back to the Fraser River, upriver from where they're catching the sturgeon. So it's really the river giving back to a piece of the river, giving back to another piece of the river, in a sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had people that were pretty critical of the program, and I get it. I can understand a little bit that we're using one resource to benefit the other. I'm like, isn't that what man does? Don't we constantly take from something and give to something else? But I never really got that argument. Yeah, it's incredible, incredible, the Jurassic and the support, and again, every year we get a donation from Sacco and Steiner for the Jurassic Classic rifle, and those funds go directly on the Fraser River as well. So, the list is just endless. We could go on and on and on, and I'm not trying to turn this into an infomercial for these supporters, but what I'm trying to again articulate is that the collaborative aspect of what we're doing for the wild sheep resource here in British Columbia is immense. It's so bigger than any one individual, and then there's just the Kyles and Chris's and the hundreds of society members that care deeply, and they donate or they give their time, treasure, talent to make a difference. And we're seeing a difference. We're truly seeing more sheep on the landscape in certain areas. There are sheep, struggling in areas. We still haven't figured out the disease issue, but where we can, we're fixing it. And there are environmental factors. Call it climate change. Call me, what's that guy's name? Gore, Al Gore.
Yeah.
But whatever you want. But the truth is there's some climate events out there that we can't control for whatever reason, and that's causing problems. But we're doing the best we can with what we have, and where we are affecting change and investing in the resource, we're seeing positive results. So it's pretty inspiring.
Yeah. Well, the key piece on it, Kyle, and we just touched on when we were talking about AWCP. Everything that we just talked about there is all built off of relationships that have taken time to develop and build. And those relationships are what brings this success. It brings people together. If you explain to I always tell people, if you give me an elevator ride in an elevator and there's a non-hunter in there, I can probably sway them unless they're the complete leftist, PETA, whatever. But if they're on the fence or they don't agree with it, at least I can have a conversation with that person. And that's that relationship building piece that's key to what we do. That's why the society is successful. It's the relationships that we've built and developed over the lifetime of the society to put us where we are today. That's the success of the society.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said for sure, Chris. Yeah. So this winter we got a big plan for the Fraser. There may be an opportunity for a drop net capture, which would involve volunteers and you getting your hands on sheep. So for our listeners, our members, just keep an ear out there. We've tried to do it the last number of years, but because of the environmental conditions, just basically not enough snow and not enough cold, the sheep weren't herding up like we hoped they would, and we had to move on with a heli capture. But anyway, it's out there if we can do it, and there's an opportunity. Certainly, you, our members and listeners and supporters, will have the opportunity to get your hands on some sheep. So keep an ear out on that, and you'll hear on that sort of closer to it's just a January, February, March thing that all transpires. So we'll keep you posted.
Yeah, no, and I think the key piece, if I don't think we got the capacity to do both, but if we can do the drop net, it's going to be the key. But we are focusing on the last piece of the Fraser, the junction Chilcotin. So we are set up to pivot to do that heli capture this year, which if we do, I think talking to Chris, he was looking at trying to do it in 2 years. But if we do it this year, it's going to be trying to be completed in 1 year. And I think he was talking, I'm trying to remember the number of sheep. I think it was like 120 sheep or 100. It was a huge number of sheep that they had to capture and test to complete this junction Chilcotin piece. So again, a huge component of the Fraser River test and moving into the final pieces of the year, the end of the project. But then after that's done, we're going to have some monitoring pieces coming in, but that's also leading into, another legacy project that we're working on, fully partnered with Wild Sheep Foundation and chapter and affiliates. I don't know if you want to touch on it a little bit, Kyle, the Coming Home project.
Yeah, let's do it. You bet. Love it.
Because it slides right into why we've done the test and remove and recovering these populations. Some populations are so low in numbers, 5-10 animals, that if the predator moves in there, we're going to lose those sheep. So we're looking at trying to bring 100 sheep back home from Oregon to British Columbia. Now, where those sheep end up has not been fully decided yet, but things are in the works that we're trying to bring sheep from Oregon back home. So for a bit of history, the junction herd provided most of the California bighorn sheep populations for repopulation in the U.S., Oregon, Idaho, Washington, Nevada, Utah. Those sheep came out of the Fraser River and the junction area. And the conversation started a year or two ago about, Oregon's got a population that are specifically sheep from the junction that are doing really well. They're actually having ewe hunts in there. And they are using those sheep to transplant in other states, but they really want to send 100 sheep back to BC. And the project is going to be called Coming Home. And, just out of that, even in the project's infancy, we still managed to raise $180,000 on an appeal at chapter and affiliates to kickstart this project and do all the diverse legwork that needs to go into getting ready to go to actually put those sheep in trailers and bring them home and release them on the Fraser River. So I'm really excited about that one. It kind of is the pièce de résistance for the Fraser River treatment working group. The whole piece. It's the final piece of the puzzle, per se.
As long as we get your legislation and policy around domestic separation, right?
That is the most important piece of everything.
And we're working on that too. So we can't go into details, but yeah, we're working on that too.
Yeah, I believe I've got a meeting with the minister next week. So.
Okay, yeah, that's the part I wasn't going to go into details on, but yes, you do. So yeah, and again, important work there. And again, just trying to find that path forward, that shared values path with ag. We tried, the aggressive stance and it just doesn't work. It's just nothing can get rammed through. So we have to do the collaborative approach. How can we, find and it's just, the more we are immersed in this, the more we have to find those ways to be proactive and work in a collaborative approach to getting it done. And yeah, it's the long game for sure. There's no there's no big wins early. You got to put the legwork in. So
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. Like I say, where we're at, and just like you say, these projects, they kind of start off a little bit small, and then they kind of develop into this holistic picture, and then the end result is what we're going to end up with. With the Psoroptes in the Okanagan, the Fraser, and moving on, and pretty soon, hopefully, we're just working on habitat work, which sliding into the north. The third legacy project is, we've successful burns again. I think it was 1,200 hectares, 1,400 hectares this spring, Kyle, for stone sheep. Winter habitat.
We did 450, which is 1,100 acres, and then we've done a total of we tried to burn for 4 or 5 years now, but we couldn't cut a couple of those years with the conditions. And in those 3 years, we've done about 1,200 hectares, or roughly 3,000 acres. So, yeah.
But yeah, hats off to Josh Hamilton and Alicia for just being persistent and to try and get those burns off in the beginning. Again, dealing with the bureaucracy piece, building those relationships, talking to people, building that trust to get those burns off. We've still got polygons for next year, so we're going to continue with the burn program. And I think we're seeing the benefits of what that habitat work's doing, but I think we're also seeing the benefits of ungulate enhancement work to help and support the lamb recruitment piece. I mean, it all comes back to that lamb recruitment piece. And we don't show our lambs, we just show our rams. There's lots of pictures of rams, but we got to look after our ewes to get those lambs on the ground to create the next generation.
Yeah, well said, for sure. Lots of great projects, and there's tons of other stuff that we're working on too. We could go on, and anyone interested can check out our website. But I think it was $735,000 in project investment last year, and there's some partner funding in that, but that's generally the society's sort of money, and then we've got so many partners on that. So, Wild Sheep Foundation, significant contributor to our burns, Dallas Safari Club, Grand Slam Club Ovis, Midwest Chapter, Wild Sheep Foundation, Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation. The list is long. So many incredible partners doing a lot of heavy lifting here within the province. It's pretty inspiring, and I think that's there's many things that we do, but we can bring a lot of people together to do really good stuff for wild sheep and beyond. Everyone's like, "Oh, you guys are sheep org." Well, yeah, there's probably a few other species that benefited from it too. Maybe not the wolves, but
maybe not wolves, but or coyotes.
Yeah.
But
joking, they benefited too because there's more sheep. They have, anyway.
Yeah,
we won't go down that rabbit hole.
We've got a balanced diet out there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure then, the final piece, how these projects start off is in, the communication piece and just people talking. And I think, touching on, I think we're coming out with a announcement, but we are going to host a symposium in Region 4 in November, I believe, Kyle, if you want to. I don't know, I can't remember the dates off the top of my head. I don't want to screw up the dates.
Yeah, so. You're right. It's November 21st. And again, this is a vision from you and our board, our projects committee, and our board of directors are supporting it. And basically, we want to do more in Region 4. We've kind of worked with a few, local entities, whether it be rod and gun clubs or others, on some of these projects. And what we want to do is kind of bring everyone together. We did the 2022 symposium in Prince George, and we had our outcome statement for Region 4. And what we want to do is take that outcome statement into the region, invite all the entities there. And, we just want to support the region, right? We want to do more for wild sheep. We get the knock, like people go, "Oh, you guys come in here, you sell the minister's permit, you get all that money, and then you don't invest in Region 4. I'm like, well, first of all, we don't get that money. That money it's sold at Wild Sheep Foundation, and it goes to Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation. They get the money, which they're doing great work. That said, they support sheep projects all across the province, and some of that money goes to other species as well. So, okay, fair enough. But don't confuse that thinking the society's getting that money. We see zero of that money, nothing. So that's a fallacy. Whoever sort of, makes that rumor, it's not true. But what we want to do is we want to come into the region, and there's so many rod and gun clubs and so many organizations doing great work for wild sheep. And, we want to have a discussion on areas of the greatest needs and how can we support. So we want to facilitate more, and certainly like in the investment and prioritizing projects, but anything else we can do to help the resource. Is there stuff that we can do on the domestic side, on the policy work, that sort of stuff? And we want to bring together First Nations, government, fish and game orgs, everyone together. That's going to be on November 21st. The society is going to host this. We're footing the bill, and we'll have a form up on the website here very shortly. So if you're in Region 4 in the Kootenays and you're interested in anything to do with BC's wild sheep in your region, make sure you show up, because we need you there, need you at the table, so that we can all get on the same page and all work collectively. And the society wants to do what we can to support the region, support the great work. There's tons of great work being done in Region 4, and we want to know what we can do to be more effective to help everyone that's doing that great work.
100%, Kyle, and I'm kind of really excited about the symposium. Like I said, building off of the Northern Symposium, the specific Region 4 issues that were identified by the guide outfitters, everybody that was sitting at that table, wild sheep components, habitat people, invasive species, like all of it plays a part. And that's one thing we haven't really touched on, where our shift is. I kind of touched on habitat work a little bit, but I think, what we're seeing in Region 4 is more the invasive species, and I'm talking about grasses, knapweed. I'm talking about how that impacts winter and summer range, cheatgrass, all those things that take out the main source of diet on summer range or spring range or whatever that looks like. So, we used to think we could go do a burn and that was going to improve everything. But now what we're finding is burns can actually trigger more invasive growth on the landscape, which impacts sheep. So just as a kind of a sidebar, not related to Region 4, but, when we overlaid that map in Kamloops Lake of the cheatgrass on Kamloops Lake habitat, and then we overlaid the collar data onto that map, and the collar data shows the sheep were not using any areas that were infested with cheatgrass. So in Kamloops Lakes, we've lost 50% of our habitat due to a cheatgrass infestation, which is, so if you lose 50% of the habitat, that probably is going to have an impact on your sheep population. So that's the important piece invasives play on potential populations of wildlife. So, when we move into Region 4, that's a big one. The project that Elkwood Rod and Gun Club, or I think it's Fernie Rod and Gun Club, I get it mixed up, a Wigwam Flops, the habitat work they're doing, that's a multi-million-dollar project, cleaning sightlines, grassland, rejuvenating the grassland in winter range for sheep and elk. So, key projects. So this is kind of why we want to touch on. We want to identify all the issues, come up with solutions, and if we can identify projects that we can move forward with, that's what we want to do. And that's the key piece about the symposium. But there's also the bureaucracy piece, is the government engagement component that's going to be tied into it. And we kind of just touch on each one as we're talking about projects, but we're not diving too far into the weeds. But that's kind of what this piece is. It's a holistic approach to come up with on-the-ground solutions that will directly benefit sheep, and, populations moving forward.
Yeah. Awesome. Well said, Chris. Yeah, it's great. I'm excited about it. So we're hoping to see all you Kootenay folks there, and beyond too, but we're not exclusive. Again, the society's going to foot the bill. We're going to feed everyone lunch, coffee, and it's going to be at the St. Eugene Golf Course, and it's going to be a great day for Region 4 Bighorns to have a great chat. Unfortunately, it's right at the end of the mule deer season. Sorry, we tried not to do it then. We tried to do it a different time, but anyway, it is what it is, and we hope to see everyone there. Be great. So, Chris, what are we missing?
I think that's kind of rounded off. I know there's another project we're going to kickstart off off of the Thompson River, right around Spence's Bridge. I won't dive too far into that, but we're looking at doing some sheep capture work and collaring work there, in partnership with the CNA. So kind of really excited about that, where that's going to lead. It's some sheep populations we do not have any information on whatsoever. We don't even have any disease sampling, health sampling on those sheep. So really looking forward to kind of kicking that off. And the cool thing about that is we're seeing those sheep populations grow and expand and moving into habitat that's been really good sheep habitat, but they haven't been there for a few years, and they're repopulating that habitat. So they're moving towards Merritt. They're moving down towards Lillooet on the east side of the Thompson or south side of the Thompson. We have no information. We don't know what we've got for domestic. So we're obviously concerned about disease transmission from domestic sheep with these populations moving back into historic habitat. So really excited to see what we come out of that. You know, the DNA component, the health component. The key piece is where do we target our habitat work for, lamb recruitment, as we've touched on. All of this information just builds on to where we're going with other projects down the road. And again, they're all going to head towards habitat work with all the collar data that we end up putting together. But really looking forward to kind of kickstarting that off. And that's kind of a phased project because, again, we know we've got a rocky population there that we haven't really done much with. We still are fortunate enough to hunt that with a GOS, and the population seems to be doing well. But we don't have a whole lot of information on any of those sheep around that area. So really excited when we kick that off and have some more information to share with our members.
Awesome. Cool. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I know we're going to have a quick chat. It's never quick when the two of us are on, and just appreciate all our members' support. And I think it's so important that we always get on and sort of remind everyone why we're doing what we're doing and where we're doing it. I think transparency and clarity in sort of the things that we're involved in and why we're doing it is good. And I think that's why our members continue to support in the way they do. And it's phenomenal. You take that $730,000, divide that by our 1,700 members. It's almost $500 a member that's going on the ground. There's some members doing a lot more than that. And some members that are, they buy their membership, they're a member. That's the way they're contributing. So their $55, $60 membership is, producing almost 10 times that amount in terms of conservation work. So tell your friends, bring your friends. We need more.
Huge. Well, just to, kind of heading in that direction, and kind of honoring sheep season. My buddy James, he's always bugging. He goes, Barker, you never talk about hunting. I go, well, yeah, there's lots of other stuff going on. So it's like, he goes, well, don't you have a hunting story you could share? I go, well, I could probably do that. So maybe seeing as it's sheep season, maybe we'll finish off with a sheep hunt with one of the ones probably that I haven't talked about yet. So I don't know if that's okay. We'll go down that hole a little bit.
You know what, buddy? You're allowed to talk about hunting on this podcast. In fact, we're trying to balance it, right? Like for our listeners, and we love to hear from you all. But do we do more hunting stuff, less hunting? Obviously, we talk a lot of hunting, but we don't get enough Barker stories. So yes, give us a hunting story for Christ's sake.
Well, I guess let's go back to our infamous LEH system, and I think I was joking maybe last year on the podcast. I was fortunate enough to draw an archery Roosevelt elk tag on Vancouver Island, and it seems like I'm on a 10-year hiatus with draws. So I was fortunate enough to harvest my elk last year. But when I looked at the dates 10 years previous, I actually drew a California Bighorn tag in Penticton. And I was actually working in camp at the time. So I only had, I think I booked an extra week off. My turnarounds were only a week. So I booked an extra week off, made it 2 weeks. But it was kind of, I think it was mid to the end of September when I finally got back in. And so I was living in Kelowna, drew the tag, and I was like, how the hell am I going to pull this one off? Once in a lifetime. So I was like, okay, let's start figuring it out. So and I was good friends with Mark Hubbard, the outfitter. So I phoned Mark. I said, hey, Mark, I drew the tag. I said, I know you've got clients coming in. I'm coming. I won't be hunting till after the fact. And go from there. So he goes, well, just give me a buzz once you get going. So got in, hunted for a few days, saw some sheep, saw a bunch of ewes and lambs. Didn't really see much for rams. Did some hiking around, and I phoned Mark up. I said, "Hey, Mark, what's going on?" And he goes, "Well, I got a guide sitting here if you want to do something." And so he goes, "Well, he can help you out." So we started hunting around. And he goes, "Well, I got this one spot up here, and you had a cabin up there." So he goes, "We can puff into the cabin. You can spend the night up there and hunt around." So we did that. And we got to the cabin, and we opened the door, and I guess he hadn't used it for a few years, and the porcupines had been there, and the pack rats. The pack rats had been living. That thing reeked, and there was shit everywhere. So we spent half a day cleaning the cabin up from all the pack rat shit, and then spent the night there and hoofed her around, and just unbelievable country, but didn't see a whole lot of sheep in there. Lots of sign, and we weren't really that high off the bottom of the valley, and so we kind of came back down after a couple of days up in the mountain, and then we were kind of just driving along the bottom, kind of glassing, and I'd been watching this one spot, and I was packing my bow as I usually do, but I did have my buddy's rifle. Again, I don't know why I didn't have my own gun with me, but I borrowed my buddy Shane's gun and was packing his, and it was coming towards the end of the hunt, and I think I may have had one left to camp, or 2 days. I think it was one day actually, and we were getting down to the nitty gritty, and we spotted some sheep across the valley, and we'd glassed them, and there was a good decent ram in there, so we did the little stalk on them, hot as hell, and kind of snuck in and around, and we couldn't find them, and then it's like, okay, well, we just kind of popped over, and sure enough, they were the rams, but they were a little bit spooky. Obviously, they'd been chased around, I think, a little bit. And I think there was three rams together, and the one ram was the decent ram. He was a good ram. And we kind of got in him, and they were down the hill underneath some pine trees. And it's like, we ain't getting any closer. And like I said, they were already up and kind of twitching around. So found a good rest, and fired a shot into him, and kind of took off, ran out of sight, and didn't know where they'd gone, and we're kind of looking around, and then Mark phones, "They're just below you." So he's just below you. So we kind of got down to where he was, and we got down to the ram, and it's like, oh my God. It's like, I was looking at the horns, and it's like, he's your typical California heavy. I think he was 9.5 years old. And, kind of that 3/4 curl. It was any ram LEH, so we didn't really have to be picky, but obviously looking for a mature ram. And obviously everybody had picked over all the good ones already. I think it was a pretty high harvest that year. And we got down there, and I went to grab the ram, and I picked his head up, and I went to move him. Was like, couldn't move him. I was like, this thing's bigger than a freaking mule deer. And it took two of us just to kind of roll him over and get him into position, just so we could, butcher him up and take some pictures and stuff. So it was a pretty cool hunt. It felt a little rushed for a sheep hunt, but it still had all those cool aspects. We were hiking around in the mountains. Again, there was a bit of highway travel in there, so not quite the true sheep hunt, but such a rewarding hunt. And we often talk about, what do you get out of that? And, I do mount a lot of my animals, and I love eating sheep. So that one had a bit more of a sagey flavor to him, obviously where he was living. But, the memory of that hunt and meeting somebody else and building that relationship. The guide I'd never met before, his name was Richard. I think his last name was Fontana or Fontanas. It was a weird name. Older gentleman, really cool guy. And he passed away about 3 or 4 years later. I think cancer, but just a really cool guy. He'd guided for Darwin Carey up at Scoop Lake. And just sharing his stories and his time in the field. Again, just that relationship piece, and obviously my relationship with Mark, just over the years from doing stuff with the society, right? it was that relationship piece that got to that success piece. But that's the memory of the hunt. But the cool part is, the ram I harvested. It's taken a while. He is life sized. I haven't got him home yet, but I think he might be in Penticton next year. And kind of a coming home story, because that's where I harvested him, was just down the bottom end of Skaha Lake. So hopefully Kenny, Mr. Thibodeau, gets him finished up. I've seen the ram. He's looking spectacular. We can have him at the Salute to Conservation next year, and everybody can view him. And now they know the story of how I got that ram. But just a really cool opportunity to get it all together. And the funny piece was, I had to go back to camp, and the horns to my buddy Shane, gave him the cape, had it all salted out. He got it to can, he got it tanned, and then I didn't see the horns probably for 4 or 5 years as I was bouncing around. So it's like when I finally saw the horns again after 5, 6, 7 years, it was like, holy shit. Now I remember what that ram looks like. So yeah, just that piece. You come back, you talk about why do you mount your animals, is like, it's all those emotions and everything come back at the end once you see those horns and touch those horns again. It was really cool. It was a bit of a rush coming back into you from what happened, because it was so quick and so evolved, and I had to get back to work. So cherish those moments in the field. I know we all talk about it, but it's trying to explain that to other people is the tough part. And I'm not sure I did a great job there, but it was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome, buddy. Very cool. Right on. Well, let's put a plug in this one. I think we got some great content. And James, Chris told a hunting story, so we're covered.
Yeah, I'm gonna make his day now.
Don't tell us we don't listen to our listeners. So
yeah,
awesome. Yeah, and appreciate you, all our members, reaching out, and congratulations to a couple buddies out there, Way, Kelvin, and a bunch of other guys that have reached out with just some truly beautiful rams. So we're hoping to share those with our membership in the magazine and on social here in the coming weeks and months ahead. So and just I'll throw this out there. We're looking for content for the magazine. So if you harvested something this fall, you took a sheep, or even if you didn't, you got some older pictures, we're always looking for content. We're also looking for love sheep stories or hunting stories. Love to hear from you. So communications at wildsheepsociety.com, or you guys know how you can get a hold of me. So love to have your info, tell your stories, share them, and even on the podcast. And thank you so much, Mr. Barker, for all you do. And I say all because it is a long and heavy list. So appreciate you, buddy.
Oh, awesome. Thanks so much, Kyle. It's always good to jump on with you and Mr. Rensmag. I know he's at work today, but it's always a pleasure chatting with you guys. I usually phone him on the way home on a Friday. So, Mr. Rensmag, you'll probably get a phone call from me tonight to just discuss life in general, as we usually do on a Friday afternoon as I'm driving home.
Right on, buddy. All right. Have a good one. Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, thanks, Cal. Bye.